Everyone, thank you for coming today. It's a beautiful day. We should be outside instead of inside, but thank you for showing up for our Insurance and Risk Management Committee meeting. Madam Secretary, if you would, please call the roll.
Preble Acton. Rhonda Allen. Here. Andrea Anthony. Here. Jim Bowles. Here. Amber Brown. Here. Christy Crowell. Here. Mary Hickerson. Here. Deborah Kennedy. Lois Miller. Here. Alan McAdoo. Jeff Phillips. Jeff Sandvich. Shantae Sherrill. Mayor.
Here. Thank you, Ms. Corbin. Stacy DePriest is our secretary, but she has Jane Corbin with her and is cross-training today, and because Stacy won't be here at our next meeting, and Jane will be filling in, but you did a good job on call and roll. So thank you for that. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next on the agenda is our financials. We'll call on our risk manager, Mr. Ed Elam.
All right, under Fund 264, the calendar period, you'll see that you have $30.6 million in revenue the prior year compared to $22.7 in expenditures. And for the current year, you have, for the same time period, you have $31.2 million in revenue compared to $22.4 million in expenditures. And when you drop down to the fiscal period, you see that you have under revenue $58.0 million in revenue and $55.8 million in expenditures compared to the current year at $62 million in revenue and $58.8 million in expenditures. And when you look down at the trend for the revenue versus expenditures, the trend for the last 24 months, you can see that that's pretty much staying in line with for the prior 12 months compared to the last 12 months. Sorry. Next, on the next page, if you want to see where total enrollment is, about the middle of the page, total enrollment is for April 6,156. And if you look at the fiscal year, because you have more data for it down at the very bottom on the right-hand side, you will see your total revenue versus expenditures. You have about a 5% margin is where you want to be in that fund. So that fund is looking good. 266, when you look at the 266 exhibit that you have, year over year paid claims, again, you see your workers' comp claim is in most every month is out in the claims is larger than it is in your OJI. And then when you look down at the bottom, workers' comp versus OJI claims, that graph also, you can see. The next one, if you want to look at the claims, OJI and workers' comp, where we are this year compared to last year, if you look in the box to your left, prior year OJI year-to-date, 798,182 compared to this year's year-to-date 657,000, and that's about 18% less than what it was last year.
Does that conclude your report?
Sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Elam. I'll entertain a motion to accept the financials. Is there a motion? Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next we have our OJI workers' comp stats from Mr. Goode. You recognize, sir.
Good afternoon. In the month of April, we had a total of 32 injuries requiring medical attention. What that does is it brings us for a year-to-date total of 83. And of those 83, 54 of them are OSHA recordable. And those recordable numbers break down to restricted days, there's 24, lost time days, 12, and all other recordables as 18. On the next page of your report, you'll see where it says that the...
Dan, let me ask you a question very quickly on the struck by or injured by. I'd just like to know, what is there a frequency or what? Falling stars, or what are they getting hit by?
No, sir. Struck by or injured by can be anything that would actually reach out and strike the employee. It could be a student, it could be a dog, it could be something falling from the roof or something like that. So something that actually reaches out and strikes the employee.
It just seemed a little high for the month of April that we're getting struck by. I'd say, now if it's students, yeah, I could see that, but and one dog bite I'm familiar with.
Dog bites would be, like I said, a dog would reach out and bite somebody or something.
We had a serious dog bite at the convenience center on one of our employees.
And we did have a serious dog bite last month also.
Okay. Yeah, that's the one I was referring to. Jumped out of the trunk.
Yes, sir.
I would have bit whoever I saw too if I was a dog stuck in the trunk. But, you know, it was serious for our employee. It was really, really bad. It got infected. And I saw the pictures. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Any questions on that first page?
As I was going to say, the 32 injuries, the total incurred dollars for last month, you'll notice it's $68,223. As you look at your first graph in the report, it's very deceiving when you first look at it. You look at it and think, oh wow, what's happening? Everything's skyrocketing. But if you actually look to the far right, you'll notice that in the first 3 months of 2017, we had 74 injuries. In 2018, the first 4 months, we had 91. And this year, we're at 83. So we're actually lower when you look at it. It's just one of those kind of rolls on a wave. And while the peak is up a little bit for the month of April, we're actually below the same period last year. Also, as you look at the next graph, you'll notice there, in 2017, for the first 4 months, the incurred dollars was $119,000. Last year at this time, it was $241,000, and we're at $172,000 this year. And that's because, again, last year in the month of January, we had 2 injuries, and 2 injuries alone amounted to over $100,000. One from a ladder fall, and another one from a weather-related incident where somebody slipped and fell.
It's kind of interesting on that back page, looking at that graph on the job injuries that June, July are so low. I guess that's because school's out.
Yes, sir.
And everybody else takes vacation, usually in June, July, and then it spikes back up in August when everybody goes back to school.
Correct, sir. And in fact,
yeah, I like watching trends of what people...
And also in the month of May, we usually, not always, but we see a lot of time in the month of May an increase, simply because school is getting out. Everybody becomes overly anxious, and I can tell in the last 2 weeks we've had a number of claims go up because they're more anxious about getting out of school and everything.
Not paying attention to what they're doing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Going over to the report where the page where it addresses the Board of Education. For last month, the Board of Education had 21 injuries. You can see the breakdown there where they're struck or injured by. There was 11 of them in the Board of Education. Trips, slips, and falls, strains, and miscellaneous. And the total incurred dollars for those 21 was $22,160,000. The Highway Department actually had one. They very seldom have an injury, but they had one last month. And it falls under the cutter puncher. The individual got cut, and it's just coming in. The incurred dollars there is for $840. Of course, that always remind you that's kind of an estimate on the front end. If the claim closes out earlier, those dollars come way down. In the county general, they had the other 10 injuries, and the total incurred there is $45,223, and you see the breakdown there where we have struck or injured by motor vehicles and cut or puncture. I would like to go back to your statement about the struck and injured by and all that. The claim count is up also this month because on the motor vehicle accidents, while we had 3, they are multi-individuals. So if you have 2 or more individuals in the vehicle and they all seek medical attention, one incident will give you 3 work-related injuries. So that's why we can see a lot more, and we did have 3 motor vehicle accidents this last month. On the last page of your report, you'll notice that the ambulance service had 3 of those injuries. The sheriff's department had 5, and solid waste and animal service had the remaining for the county general's total of 10. That's all I have at this time, sir.
That concludes your report. Thank you, sir. Next, we have, I'll entertain a motion to accept the report. Got a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Commissioner Phillips.
One quick question, Mayor. How do we budget? How do we budget for this department and for accidents in general, or do we budget for them?
That's a good question. I'll yield to our Director of Finance, Lisa.
Hello? Okay. The question, how do we fund it? Each of the departments fund it. The county does. We just went over that last night of how much that the county is contributing to the fund. School board contributes more. I keep up with it since inception on how much money each of the divisions have contributed into the fund and how much each division has incurred claims. So we have an actuarial study done every 2 years to make sure that for those claims that we don't know about, was incurred but not reported yet, we have an estimate for that. So, I mean, we look at that every year. But we've kind of kept the amount of contributions pretty steady. If you remember this year, I think, as I've said, the schools have contributed more than the county has and probably have borne part of our expense, but, you know, we've kept up with that. And so some of the last couple of years we told Jeff, hold his contribution. He puts the same amount in his fund to pay, but a couple times, and we'll do that to the highway fund and say, Mary, hold your contribution. But as far as a budgetary process, we just keep the same number in our budgets. Did that answer your?
There is a line item for each department for the school board.
It'll be for solid waste has a line. You've got a line. Mary's got a line. I don't think we've got one for ambulance. They're not contributing.
If there's a budget, a line item budget number, let's just say for schools, and it's $10 million, and let's say it's $1 million, and they end up
$527,000.
Let's just say it's $500,000, and you end up spending 250 of that 5. Where does the other 250 go? Does it roll over?
It stays in the fund. Once it goes in the workers' comp fund, it stays in the fund.
I'm understand that, but what happens to the unused half of that? If we incur half of it, does that? What happens to that money? Okay, so
if we've told Jeff, hold your contributions, Mary, hold your contributions, it stays in their fund. Yeah. If it's not spent or transferred for another use, it rolls into their fund balance.
Yeah.
Can it be transferred and used for something else?
Well,
yes.
This is on the budgeted dollar side. I regret that I did the transfer that way. I wish I'd just done unassigned, but what we look at is history to date of that fund. Lisa and Mark have all the data, get with the actuaries and look at what expenditures have been attributable to the school board, and then what funds has the school board paid. We have to keep education funds separate from other county funds, and you have to keep some of your funds separate. We can't commingle. That's one of the big no's with the state. A huge no with education. So we look at, since the inception of the OJI plan, what total funds has the Board of Ed paid out of its budget, and what have our total claims been? Proportionately, our claims have been significantly lower than the amount we have been contributing. And we've got enough history there to be confident we don't have any unfunded liability floating around. So that is why last year and the year before, and Lisa and Mark looked at that, we don't need your $527,000, just send us half of it, because we have built up enough in the reserves for future accidents. We feel we are covered.
So in essence, theoretically, in my mind, we are rolling it over.
If we send...
Don't give me that much more money this year because I don't need it.
Right, yes, because we have already basically funded the liability as best we can tell.
The county has had more claims. When I adjust revenues, I will have an adjustment for the county's contribution to pick up more of the contribution to go into workers' comp. We'll be doing that in June.
I guess what led to the question, if we perform better in a particular year and we don't spend those dollars on workers' compensation, it seems like that money should not be available to spend elsewhere. It should be money that goes to the bottom line of the county and to the taxpayers of the county. That's theoretically what in my mind should happen.
It does. When we were 100% workers' comp, our liability for future claims, not future claims, claims and judgment payable was huge. As we transitioned out of workers' comp into OJI, those dollars that had to go into the fund reduced for everybody. And so that program alone has saved the county a lot of money, and it stayed in the three funds.
Other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4. Got the wellness update. Mr. Chapa. We did. You're recognized.
Hello, everyone. So for our 2019 Know Your Numbers year to date, we're at 1,408 annual physicals being completed. We're at 1,377 biometric screenings, 516 health assessments, 615 mammograms, 951 OBGYN screenings. Colon cancer screenings are at 235. Cervical cancer screenings are at 884. Prostate exam screenings are 244. Flu shots are currently at 1,699, and to date, we're at 1,703 employees completing all of their 3 points to meet their incentive at this time. So we're seeing some really great numbers. A lot of this, again, is due to the claims-driven process. So it's automatic, it's picked up, and within 2 to 3 weeks, they're seeing it on their account at MyCigna. So this is a lot easier of a system to be able to get in and track. Also, the preventative screenings, just as you can see, we've seen a great level of completion for those. Few things that we've been able to accomplish in the last few weeks. We've been able to really kick off the Wellness on Wheels campaign. We've been getting out to several sites and interacting with employees, talking about the incentive program, educating on the new incentive pieces. So we were successful in getting over to the County Election Commission building, speaking with all that crew in there. We had a great turnout. Everybody had a good time. We also were able to get to the county clerk, both here in Murfreesboro and out in Smyrna. And we also were able to set up the St. Thomas mobile mammography bus in 2 separate locations for the county. Due to that, we've been able to get 37 mammograms completed with the St. Thomas bus. We're looking at setting up a 3rd location out in Smyrna to be able to get to the Smyrna employees. But that is an excellent completion rate. The St. Thomas crew that runs that bus gave us a big high five for being able to complete that many mammograms. So huge turnout for that, and thank you all for promoting that out to the county as well. And so we also had a chance to get out to Highway and speak to that crew and speak to everyone to the incentive pieces and the several different things that we can offer through that, also through the risk management department. So we want to thank Mary for letting us come out there and talk. And again, we're going to continue this momentum. We're going to move forward with the Wellness on Wheels. We're going to start reaching out to the Board of Education pretty soon, and we'll start reaching out to the different principals. So we look for your support in that, just to get to that crew. Upcoming programs that we've got in the next few months. So Wellness on Wheels, like I said, is ongoing. The Life Services AEAP has got the Healthy Mind Toolkit that'll be available May 21st on demand for all employees. More information on how to access that can be found on the Rutherford County website. But again, if any employee has an issue or access with EAP, please reach out to the Risk Management Office and we'll be able to accommodate and get that information to you. And lastly, coming up in July, we have another Lifestyle Management Wellness on Wheels, Lifestyle Management class. This one will be focused on the job workouts and exercises that you can do at the workplace. You don't need a gym, you don't need special equipment, things like that. So that'll be coming up in July. We'll get sending out a lot more information on that, and that'll be at 5 p.m. over at the Lane Ag Center. Do I have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Questions?
Will you just remind everyone what the deadline is for accumulating their points for this?
Yes, so September 30th is the deadline for the incentive completion. So the campaign runs from January 1st to September 30th. And so you have, from that time period, for each eligible employee that is on the medical plan, they need to accumulate 3 points. If they have a spouse on the medical plan, they need to accumulate 3 points as well. And so for that, there's several incentive options, and we have more information about that on our website. There's a lot more options this year than previous years, and we've seen a great amount of positive feedback and ease of use through that as well.
Other comments, questions? Thank you. Under the same item, I'm going to call on Lee Smith. She's going to come forward and from Cigna and talk about a little, did you know? Yes.
Just a real quick, I do want to say a big thank you to Chuck and Sandy and Ed and Lee for coming out yesterday evening to the guys. We brought them all in about 3:30. They all sat down, they listened, they paid attention, and there was a lot of good information. So I want to say we appreciate y'all being available to come out and do that. So I do hope that y'all can do that at other sites. And so all of the department heads or elected officials that are watching this or listening, it is easy for them to come out. My guys take about an hour, but we covered a whole lot more than the little quick health incentive thing. So it's a good thing to pay attention, and we do appreciate it, and we appreciate Ed for allowing his department to do it, and Mr. Mayor, yourself for allowing them to do this and be a more hands-on for our employees. It makes it easier because it's not as simple for everybody, and insurance is not simple for hardly anybody. So I do want to go on record as saying thank you very much.
Well, you're quite welcome for those comments, and our department's glad to do that. Cigna's glad to do that because insurance is complicated. It's hard to navigate. Sometimes I feel sorry for seniors who you see them in the hospital and they're lost because they don't know how to navigate the system, and many times they're taken advantage of. But that's why we do longer versions of what you all got yesterday, and that's why we're going to do a little Did You Know today for us. So Lee, if you will, you're recognized.
Allowing us to come out yesterday. That was amazing. So my name is Lee Smith, and I'm a Cigna employee. I office at Rutherford County, so I'm in the Risk and Insurance Department office. So I'm there and available to help you guys and any of your employees with any questions that they have about their benefits, the incentives, any of the special programs that we offer. We feel that Cigna offers a lot of programs to this group, more than most employers offer, but we also feel like it doesn't maybe get communicated as it should because of the large population. So today I'm going to talk about Cigna's Healthy Pregnancies, Healthy Babies program. This is in your packet. So in this program, Cigna tries to address healthy pregnancies and healthy babies to encourage employees to participate once they find out they're pregnant, because 1 in 10 babies in the United States are born prematurely. Preterm infants have lung, breathing, and improper lung development, and in addition they can develop intestinal, vision, hearing, dental problems. So very important to make sure that we get babies here healthy and pregnancies to term. So how the program works, it's been shown to positively impact health outcomes for pregnant women and their babies, because they actually just assign them a nurse who will coach them through the pregnancy. The nurse they're assigned stays their coach throughout the duration of the pregnancy, so you kind of get that one-on-one and get to know them. You don't feel like you're having to re-explain the story or get to know someone every time. And there's no charge for any Cigna members for this service. So any new moms that enroll by the last of their first trimester get a $150 gift card from Cigna, and if they enroll by the end of their second trimester, they get a $75 gift card. So there's a little bit of, incentive for them to do that. They can buy a lot of diapers. And the other part of this program, which Cigna launched recently, was an app in association with this program. So from the app, you can download it to your phone. They can enroll in the program from the app. There's a one-click button that you can click to call the nurse that's been assigned to you. There's lots of videos and good information just about staying healthy through your pregnancy. They can get daily updates. They can keep up with how their baby's growing throughout the pregnancy. I think it compares it maybe to various fruits throughout the stages. But we just feel like this is a very important program and one that we really haven't promoted that much. So periodically I'll be here just promoting Cigna and Did You Know. Lastly, if anyone is interested in enrolling in that program, all they have to do is either call the number on the back of your medical ID card, or you can actually download the app and log in with your MyCigna username and password, so you can access it that way too. Any questions?
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Lee. Okay, next we have the MedPoint report. Sharon McNair. It was just an update. I don't think we need a motion.
Not on that, you don't.
You're recognized.
All right. If you guys will pull out the handout that we have there for you for the MedPoint clinics. Just wanted to start off by saying you may see a different look to our presentation today. We've worked with Mr. Elam on revamping this today, so just going to start going through it, and if you have questions, please stop me and I'll be happy to explain. The first page there is this month at MedPoint. So in April of 2019, total face-to-face clinic visits were 845. And below that, you see we have broken those out in the different visit types that we see there in the clinic. The top was at provider visits. That's where you come into the clinic and you see an actual provider, whether it be a nurse practitioner or a medical doctor. That was at 739. Lab-only visit, that may be if they're coming in just to get some blood work. Their provider maybe have ordered some labs and they're coming to our clinic to utilize that service at no charge to them. They bring the order with them and we'll draw the labs and send that directly to their provider. That was 21. The biometric-only visit, I know you guys are aware of the biometric visit, so that's when they came in and got that blood work done. That was at 41. Occupational health visits were at 5. That is in reference to our hepatitis B vaccinations or the hepatitis B titers. So the only occupational health that we currently provide in the clinics are related to those immunizations. And we'll touch base. We're adding a new service there at MedPoint related to these occupational visits, and I'll touch that in a future slide. And then the last there, you see our wellness visits at 39. Below that, you see our non-face-to-face encounters. So these are those encounters that we've talked about in previous meetings where we deliver patient care, but it's not direct in the clinic. So that may be we get lab results back, and we notice that we maybe need to increase their cholesterol medication. And so we call the patient, we discuss it with them, and then we send in that medication order to the pharmacy. So that would be an order only there at 148 for the month of April. A telephone encounter would be very similar in the sense that we reviewed a result, whether it be a radiology or a lab result, and we contacted the patient and had a conversation with them to go over those lab results so they knew those. And they didn't have to come into the clinic, time away from work or time away from family to discuss that. We reached out to them and did that over the phone. And then the last one, that was at 183. And then the last one there is a results review with us communicating via letters. So they review their chart, they look at the results, and they complete a letter letting that patient know how the results were of that, of those, whether it be radiology or labs. And those were at 191 for April. Any questions on that first slide? All right. The next slide there is what's coming, what's ahead at MedPoint. As you see at the top, we are going to be adding the occupational rabies vaccination to the MedPoint services for eligible employees. So what this is if you work for the PAWS department and you qualify, and the director there at PAWS will notify us who is eligible, they can now receive that vaccination at our clinic starting as early as next month. So we're working directly with the director at PAWS to get that list and to get that going. Thank you, Mr. Elam, for allowing us to do that there and help the county out over at the PAWS department. So they have to be eligible and on the list to receive that service. The next thing is direct outreach to members who have an identified gap in care. We transitioned to a new electronic medical record back in November that I know most of you are aware of. And one of the benefits of this new electronic medical record is that depending on what a patient is there for, it'll identify different gaps in care. So for example, if you're a diabetic patient, it's recommended that you get regular foot exams, regular eye exams, and it'll basically populate in the chart, when was their last foot exam, when was their last eye exam, to make sure that you're getting the full service and we're treating the whole person there and not just the diabetes that they're there for at that time. So we're gonna start doing direct outreach to members who have those identified gaps in cares. The next thing is educating new and existing members on all services that are offered through MedPoint. You know, we sometimes get patients in that don't realize that we do more than just the biometric screening or acute care visits. And so we have found it super important that we're letting everyone know as they're coming in all the different services that we can provide there at the MedPoint clinics. The next slide there is the Did You Know MedPoint offers pre-packed medications. I think some of you may have heard these in previous presentations here, but we offer a variety of pre-packaged medications there in the clinic. We have chronic disease medications. So if MedPoint is the treating provider for a chronic condition such as hypertension, diabetes, hypothyroidism, or hyperlipidemia, we may have the medication there available on site in a pre-packaged form. Members interested in inquiring if we carry the medication there at the MedPoint clinic can reach out to us and email us through our MedPoint email that's listed there on that slide, or they can schedule an appointment with the provider and bring their medication list, and we can look at their medications and determine if we have it there. The other thing is acute care medication. So if you have strep, flu, while you're there, we carry a lot of antibiotics or Tamiflu for the flu. They're on site with us, so they're not having to leave from our site and go to a pharmacy. So for convenience, we have those prepackaged meds there. So if they are dispensed from that clinic visit, then there's no cost to the member. Any questions?
Shannon, you might reiterate on that they have to be the treating provider. You just can't walk in and ask for medication at MedPoint.
Right, so we're not a pharmacy. There's certain federal and state regulations that we have to be the treating provider for the condition. So, can't bring a script from a primary care physician and bring it to us and we dispense a medication. It has to be within a clinic visit, so you're seeing the provider for whatever the condition it is, whether it's hypertension, like a chronic condition, or if it's an acute condition such as strep or flu. We have to be the treating provider. We're not a pharmacy. Okay. If you'll turn a couple of pages over, this is a more similar to what you've seen in the past, our month-to-month trends there for 2019. I've separated these out, so they're in the gold or yellow is our clinic visit trend from January to April. And then the pink or purple colored line is our non-face-to-face encounters. So we've just separated those out for you guys so you can see the trend month to month for the 2019. And then the next page is a similar looking page, however, there has been some changes to this, so I'd just like to point them out. There you see a month to month with our total operating costs there in the middle, and for April of 2019, total operating costs were $224,121. And then total unique members, this is a new column, and this is how many unique individuals came into the clinics in the month of April. So 656 different individuals presented to the clinic. They may have presented more than one time in that month, but it was they presented at least one, and it was per individual. Okay. And then the next slide is our incoming calls at MedPoint. For April of 2019, we had 3,044 calls, and that's only incoming calls. That does not include when we're calling patients back or calling patients for results review and that nature. So incoming call average per day for April was 138. And that concludes my report, Mayor.
Any questions? Discussion? Well, thank you very much.
Ketchum, can I just say one thing?
Yes, Mr. Elam.
As the members see, there's a little bit of difference in some of the reporting that you're getting, and part of what we're doing is do like a 5-minute educational, did you know, here's what part of your coverage is, something that's out there that we may get a call during that month and somebody says, I didn't even know that Cigna covered that. That's a great program. So we're just trying to, each month, put a couple of things out there to you, maybe a 5-minute presentation, and especially since we have an audience on TV, so everybody can have it. Like, I did not know that was there, and now we're trying to get it out there, picked our top 10 per year and put something out there and help you spread the word that, what coverage you have and what programs are available. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll entertain a motion to accept MedPoint report. Motion, and is there a second? And a second? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we have item number 6, property and casualty coverage presentation. Mr. David Patterson from Assured Partners. Mr. Patterson, you are recognized. Welcome.
So you have a presentation that has that on the front. And I'm going to just skip by the first couple pages. That's just about how wonderful we are, and you guys probably already know all that. So I'll dive into the meat of it. And I'm going to take this one line of coverage at a time. I know insurance can be very complicated and confusing. We do our best, and we're pretty good at what we do. So I'm going to take the property first, and my recommendation is probably going to be for a change, or will be for a change. So I guess we'll just take those line by line, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. I don't intend to go through every line of coverage, so as you look down through that list, I'm going to hit the highlights. If there's a question you have about any specific one of these coverages, I'm more than happy to go into the detail of it. But specifically, the first line you'll see is the total insured value. That is all of the property owned by the county and Board of Education. You can see I highlighted the columns, current, renewal, which both of those would be with Travelers Insurance Company, who's the current carrier, and then a proposed property program through the APIP Public Entity Property Program. Currently, we have about $1,313,000. The renewal will go to $1,322,000, and then I actually increased under the APIC program for 2 new schools that'll be coming online in August. So those 2 new schools are included, and that's why that number is $1,449,000. Everybody tracking on that? One of the things that I recommend we change, currently we have an occurrence limit of $100 million, meaning any one fire, any one tornado, any one occurrence, the most that the traveler's insurance policy will pay is $100 million. It's really not enough, because if 2 schools were implicated in one tornado, it could easily exceed $100 million. So my recommendation would be to go to $500 million, a $500 million occurrence. And you can see in the renewal, I included in the premium column, I should have mentioned this earlier, in the premium column, if there's a change that actually results in additional premium, then that's why a premium shows. So, for example, $100 million, you can see what the premium for that policy was currently, what the premium would be on renewal, but to increase it to a $500 million occurrence, the $500 million is an additional $120,000 of premium. Does that make sense? And then I just had APIP quote, $500 million, okay? Then going down, you'll see in the APIP column, and I don't want to seem biased, but I guess perhaps I am, the APIP coverage is far superior to the traveler's policy. I mean, it's not even close. So I just highlighted the really big stuff, but you can see as you look down through there, I don't think there's any single line of coverage that APIP isn't equal to or better than the traveler's program. For example, under boiler and machinery, you can see that I've highlighted or bold $100 million of coverage. We currently don't have boiler and machinery coverage at all. I had travelers included. You can see that that would be $56,000. And with APIP, they included $100 million, and it's actually built into that premium. A little further down, newly acquired. Currently, it's $2.5 million. Under the APIP form, it's $25 million. Let's see, the next one is covered property in transit, I think, if I'm reading across the line right, it's $25 million. Pollution, it's a biggie. We've got $2 million of pollution coverage under the APIP form. There's no pollution coverage, there's a $2.5 million of pollution coverage under the, wait a minute, I'm sorry. There is no coverage under pollution $100,000 of coverage. I can't read across the line. I apologize. $100,000 of pollution coverage under travelers, which does not include fuel storage. The APIP form includes fuel storage, above ground storage tanks, which I think we have several of. $2 million. Errors and omissions coverage, this covers ED. So if we made a mistake in all of the work that we've done in the last 40 or 50 hours over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and we missed something, we got $50 million of oops money. There's no currently any of that on the travelers. Business income's $100 million. With travelers, it's $1 million. I think you guys are getting the gist of it. Extra expense, currently $2.5 million. It's $50 million. Another really, really big one. Currently, we have, I'm doing this from memory, $21 million of property value in flood zone A. Is that right, Jeff? Is it $21 million? I'm doing it from memory. We have a lot of value in flood zone A. Flood zone A means it's in a flood zone. There's flood zone X, which is everybody's in flood zone X, but flood zone A is actually they call it like the 100-year and 500-year floodplain. That's flood zone A, and we have a lot of value, and it's currently not insured under the traveler's policy. In APIP included $10 million of flood zone A. Builder's risk coverage, $3 million currently, $25 million under APIP. Another big coverage, automobile physical damage. So currently, under the traveler's property policy, there is no automobile physical damage. And when we get to the casualty, I'll show you where there's a little bit there. But I had them include auto physical damage at replacement costs. So if we total a fire truck, and it's 30 years old, we're going to get a brand-new fire truck. So that's big.
David, what's our deductible?
$100,000.
Okay. Can I go back up under soft cost? Under unmanned aircraft? What is the company's definition of unmanned aircraft?
It's drone coverage.
Okay, it's drone coverage, because we've almost got a drone Air Force now in Rutherford County.
Everybody's got drones, and this is coverage for the drone itself. Property coverage. We haven't got to the casualty coverage
Okay,
yet.
okay. I was
So
just
this is if
I've almost got that much in drones. At least I've signed off on that. Batteries.
they get expensive. And since you brought it up, now drones are only insured when they're not flying. It's an important distinction.
Yeah, there's a lot of operator error, but at least our drone operators are 3 best in the state.
They're all certified.
They're all certified.
I've gotten all their certifications
Thank
and all
you,
that
sir.
stuff. They're all the drone airers are certified. Expediting expense, I skipped over business income a minute ago because you're a taxing authority and really not going to have a business income loss if we lost a building, but you certainly could have an extra expense. Probably would have an extra expense. Currently, it's $1 million limit. Under the APIP form, it's a $50 million limit.
And let me interrupt you one more time on the historical replacement cost for this building.
Any building. So,
Yeah, but mainly this to bring in the artisans and et cetera, artisan contractors, et cetera. I want to make sure that this building is properly insured for historical replacement cost.
So Mayor Ketcher and I had a conversation early in this process, and his concern was that replacement cost isn't necessarily replacement cost. And I don't want to get in the weeds too deep, but when it's a historical building, a column, that column is not just any column, it's that column. So that column costs more because of its historical significance than the column in my house, okay? So his concern was that we're valuing the property at historical basis and not just what a standard Marshall & Swift replacement cost estimation would give us. The APIP form stipulates that historical valuation is built into the form as long as the building is registered on either the state or federal historic structure registry, and this one is, so it's covered. So if that column costs 3 times as much because it's that column, then that's what they're going to pay. So you can kind of see, I don't want to belabor the point, but you can kind of see as we go down through there that the APIP form is far superior. Do you have any specific questions about any of these coverages? The biggies are the occurrence going up to $500,000, covering the autos at replacement costs, not actual cash value. Actual cash value is depreciated value. So if you've got a 30-year-old fire truck, you know, that maybe today costs $600,000-$700,000, but you know, you paid $150,000 for it 20 or 30 years ago, and now it's only worth $27,000. So you get a $27,000 check for a fire truck that's going to cost $600,000 to replace. That's not the kind of check that we want to write. So that's why we're insuring it at replacement cost. Same thing with school buses or dump trucks or anything.
I think in your tenure perhaps, Lois, when we had this discussion last time, that 100 million threshold, we use the example, one of our 3 school campuses. We now would probably be looking at 140 to 150 million.
Like Blackman. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if Blackman got hit by a tornado, ooh, it's not going to be a $100 million loss. Plus all the automobiles, you know, anything else that might be implicated. And that one tornado could go across the entire county and take out 3 schools, you know, a highway building. I mean, it could be devastating because those things can stay on the ground for miles and miles. So, yeah, $500,000 is definitely not enough.
the APEB obviously is a superior program, but I'm sure a lot of people have never heard of them as a carrier. Could you speak to any other clients, municipal clients that you have that are in this program?
Oh, yeah.
And could you also speak to the financial viability and strength of the company?
Yes. So the Public Entity Property Insurance Program, APIP, is probably the largest single property placement program in the world. I don't know how many hundreds of billions of dollars this program is. So your policy is about this thick, but it's on Lexington Insurance Company paper. So Lexington is part of the AIG group, A-plus class 7 or 15 carrier. So all the claims payments and stuff comes through Lexington. If you get a claim check, it's going to be on a Lexington check. Does that make sense? So as far as public entities, I mean, golly, I mean, specifically name names? Okay, well, Sumner County, City of Clarksville, Montgomery County, perhaps you guys, I mean, big ones, that would be, yeah, that's just a handful of big ones. But I mean, they're across the entire country, they write only public entity accounts. So there's no skyscrapers, unless it's owned by, you know, maybe in Chicago or someplace, maybe there's one, I don't know, but it's only public entity accounts. That makes sense. Okay. Includes earthquake, flood, all that stuff. And you can see towards the bottom there, the valuation is all replacement cost with APIP, and then currently it's actual cash value with Travelers, it's actual cash value on contractors' equipment and automobiles. And we've got replacement cost on both because new excavators cost $175,000. And if one burns up while the highway department is digging something, then we get a brand new excavator. So my recommendation would be to change from Travelers to the APIP Public Entity Property Program for the property for the coming fiscal year 20.
I have a question, David, on the EPLI coverage. Of course, that's all right. You going into into liability? Pardon me?
I don't know about procedurally. Do we just go to the next one and then we talk about it all at once?
Yeah, why don't you just go to the next one? We'll talk about all of them. If you do have any questions, go ahead and write them down, and we'll come back to and wrap it up with the questions on the property side and the liability side. Okay. Go ahead.
So the casualty is the next page, actually the next couple of pages. Currently we're with BRIT, which is a Lloyd's of London program. And my recommendation is that we stay with the BRIT, and we'll get to what everybody else said in a minute ago. So no significant changes to the casualty program, other than I'm changing the auto, which currently under the physical damage under your casualty program, this might get complicated. So we've got auto physical damage under the casualty with BRIT and also with APIP. Okay, so the first $1 million of coverage for auto physical damage is with BRIT. And then the next $500 million of coverage for auto, because there's no limit on the auto, would be with APIP. That make sense? So APIP's got like $1 million deductible on the auto physical damage. Think of it that way. But the first $1 million is covered here. Okay, so I'm changing that from actual cash value, the way it is currently, to replacement costs, so that we can get the fire chief a brand new fire truck, and he'll be very happy. Limit-wise, everything's exactly the same. You can see we got $975 for auto physical damage, $5 million, $10 million limits under the general liability, $5 million limit under auto liability, public officials, $5 million, and then of course all the sub-limits for errors and omissions, employment practices. Do you have a specific question or just what the?
We'll wait till the end. Go ahead.
Okay. So you can see the sub-limits. Excess workers' comp, of course, you guys are OJI, so we don't have any coverage for workers' compensation. Employee benefit liability, that's another errors and omissions coverage. That's an OOPS coverage for risk management. If hire a new employee and they're supposed to be added to the Cigna program in 60 days. I don't know what the waiting period is, but they turn in their paperwork and for some reason it doesn't get processed. The employee comes in 120 days later saying, oh man, I'm sure glad I got that insurance because my wife has got some dread disease. Oops, right? Because we didn't add them. And that's where we cover them. That's where we cover those mistakes. We got crime coverage, $475,000. And then I'm also recommending that we add a terrorism coverage. I don't know that Rutherford County is going to be a terrorist target. I don't even know that there's going to be a terrorist act because it has to be a certified act of terrorism. And since 9/11, there's been 0 certified acts of terrorism. Now, all the stuff that we hear in the media, the Boston bombers, which was obviously a terrorist attack, was not a certified act of terrorism. There was a lot of brouhaha about that because the shop owners, this is too much information, the shop owners complained that it wasn't a certified act of terrorism because they didn't have any coverage. So I'm recommending that we add, and it's just $3,500, that we add terrorism coverage. And then you can see the retentions. Automobile physical damage, we've got a $2,500 deductible. So if the fire chief wrecks one of his old fire trucks and we buy him a brand new fire truck, it's going to be less than $25,000. I'm just picking on the fire chief. $350,000 self-insured retention on all the other lines. Any questions about the casualty? Yes.
So the increase in the premium then is going to be coming almost exclusively from the valuation option?
Right.
And that is for what?
Going from actual cash value on the automobile to replacement cost. So the difference is that $600,000 fire truck, I'm just using that as an example, when we bought it, it was $150,000, and that was 20 years ago, and now it's only worth $30,000. That's the actual cash value. So when we report that value to the insurance company, we report $30,000. On replacement cost, we're going to get a brand new fire truck that costs $600,000. We have to report $600,000.
So if we reduced our fleet and we're looking through the budget process to go with a fleet management process, and we reduce the amount of fleet that we personally own, will that adjust that, or will? I know you still got to. Okay, never mind.
Generally, the answer to your question is yes. Yes. So if our fleet is smaller, because we have 1,000 plus vehicles on the fleet, if it went down to 600, insurance would cost less. Is that? So on the next page, when I went to part of the process of being hired as your broker was to go out to the marketplace and make sure that we're getting the very best coverages for the best premium for the county. That's how APIP came in on the property side, and my recommendation was still with Brit because they're still the best carrier at the most competitive premium. And this next page is just what the response was from all the other carriers that I talked to on the casualty side of things. Nobody really would beat Brit. Either they wouldn't provide the coverage that we wanted, or they weren't competitive, and there was even a couple that never even responded to me. So that's kind of the market response on the casualty. Cyber liability. This is a coverage that
before we go there, let me ask a couple of questions because I may want to entertain a motion for the property and casualty, and then that one separately. It's with a different carrier. It's a different carrier. But going back to the EPLI coverage, and of course I'm seeing sexual harassment liability also. Did we request an excess umbrella, or do we not carry one?
So no, it's all excess of the $350,000, and it's a $5 million limit.
Yeah, I'm just a little more concerned about the EPLI since it's the thing to do now on sexual harassment, and maybe something that this committee might want to look at, that we need at least a $10 million umbrella on top of this $5 million.
Actually increase these limits to.
Can you? Could you get us some numbers on that and let us look at that next month? the Me Too movement and everything else today, I'm concerned that there's people are just looking for deeper pockets, and the $5 million may not be enough to protect the county on those specific items.
There are specific coverages where having higher limits, and this could be one of them. So any federal claim, of course, because the GTLA protects us up on tort claims up to $300,000 any one claim, $700,000 any one accident. But some of these claims, like professional liability claims and federal claims, are not. We don't have the GTLA protection. So that's where having $5 million. Otherwise, you just carry $700,000 limit, and you know, per occurrence, you don't worry about it. But things can go wrong that cost a lot more than $300,000.
Also, another question I have. I'd like for you to possibly look at this. Lisa, how much are we paying right now to each volunteer fire department? About $50,000. 50. That's in the budget. What could there be, because the majority of the vehicles we have, I believe they're still titled in our name. The fire trucks are still titled in our name. And we're giving them $50,000 to pay the insurance and et cetera for the volunteer fire departments. And many times, just like Fosterville, we owned that building that the volunteer fire department was in. They were turn around, we'd give them 50, and they would pay their own insurance on the outside market through VSI, I think, or VIS, Volunteer Insurance Services, and also paying for insurance on the truck. Their drivers are even though they're volunteers, but in many, just like now, Fosterville, we have 2 full-time people as of May 1st at Fosterville in our building, and that just occurred. And those trucks that we are purchasing for them, and we rotate the new ones in, and I think we've got 2 more ordered in this year's budget. Fire departments, close to that. And I'm just wondering, can we save our volunteer fire departments some money by incorporating those into our plan and name the volunteer fire departments as additional named insured? Is that a possibility? If you could check on that.
Yeah, so from my perspective, yeah, the answer is yes, we can do that. Of course, it would be under the same terms and conditions of these policies, meaning the auto liability would have a $350,000 SIR on a claim.
Well, and I think that some of their pushback, and talking with Chief Farley, that they've only got a $250 deductible, you know, on a $500,000 fire truck that we're giving them, and that's why it's costing them so much, you know, to buy the insurance on the physical damage for the vehicle. But I think if we sit down and talk to the fire chiefs and et cetera, we can work out a way that we can save money for them and us, and then set aside. It's not going to happen. It does happen. I mean, we rode one over in Walter Hill several years ago, and guy didn't know how to drive the water tank and didn't have baffles in it, so as the water shifted, he rolled it in response. But I would like to explore that with you this year.
We can definitely structure a program either as a subset of what we currently have, or I can even start something brand new.
Okay. Before we get in, any other questions on the property and the casualty side of what David has shared with us? If you don't have any questions, I'll entertain a motion that we go with APIP and BRIT. APIP is a new property company, and BRIT is the renewal. We're staying or retaining with BRIT from the liability side. 2 questions. Commissioner.
The policy, does it run on the fiscal year? Is that its effective date?
This would actually start 7/1.
July 1.
So do we have time then to incorporate the foster bill and the umbrella policy, the things that you were talking about? Are we going to have time to look at that again?
That can be added at any point in time, so yes, to answer your question, he could add that today and it's ready to go. We may not know what the premium is, but surely within a month we can get those numbers back.
I'm just curious, is it the kind of thing that we could add after the policy starts? Like if it takes us some time to get through those numbers or details or whatever, is it something that could be added in September or October? Or do you add it, can you add it partway through, or does it have to start with the same cycle as this policy?
I can add it partway through. So, and I can also make a kind of a blanket statement, which is always dangerous, but if the volunteer fire departments just wanted to like roll into our current program, we could probably do all of them for $50,000. Not per, I mean all of them. So, but then they're taking more risk.
I know, but for the amount that we're saving, we could set aside for whatever that one deductible might be once every 5 years. You know, I'm just, hang on just a second, Jeff was next. Oh, sorry, hang on to that thought. Go ahead.
More thought, if we're buying the vehicles anyways, the county's already assuming the liability and the risk. Even though they have the insurance, you know, we would have to offset any of those costs already. I know they bought it in the premium, but I'm saying if there was a damage to that vehicle, am I not correct that we're already buying a lot of these fire trucks and the equipment that they're using? So if it wasn't at replacement cost, the county would end up replacing it and having to pick up that additional cost, right?
Yeah, I think it warrants, you know, sitting down, let's talk and see what the carrier's willing to do.
And if they're county-owned vehicles, they're already in here. If it's a county-owned vehicle, even if it's parked in the volunteer fire department's building, it's already insured. So I don't even know how many.
But could we add the liability as additional named insured under our liability for those?
Well, and that would be a conversation we'd want to get
exactly
legal involved with
the
because we
volunteer
want to
fire
maintain
departments.
that, you know, those tort caps. We want to make sure we don't do anything.
Okay.
Because I don't know if a volunteer fire department would qualify. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'd have to ask them. There's got to be conversation about that.
Well, and also when you're talking when you get back with the carrier, ask them about let's just take Fosterville, hypothetically, they were strictly all volunteer. The chief has made the decision because the board of directors has given up. They're turning over everything to us, giving us the key to the door and everything else, and they're saying, we're out of the business, we're not going to do it anymore for that community. And the volunteers are still going to be involved, but we'll have 2 paid fire personnel representing the county that are there during the daytime, because that's what's happening to volunteer units, is that most of these volunteers used to be you worked on the farm, you worked somewhere locally within that community in Las Casas or wherever. These people have to make a job, they have to make a living today, and those have disappeared in the rural areas. So now we've got a mix, and we're going to continue that mix for a period of time until we can fully staff all of our. Steve, how many volunteer units? 12 volunteer fire departments? 13. Yeah, something like that. So that's something we'd like to explore with the carrier. Okay. Jeff. On APIP and Britt on the property and casualty. Have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation of APIP and Britt signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Lisa, do we need roll call because we're expending money? I don't think so. We're just a recommending body. Insurance is just a recommending body. We'd call the roll call when it got to the commission. Okay. All right. Sorry, David, go ahead.
So,
cyber.
So cyber liability, excuse me, is network security, information security. It's you know, short of employment practices liability, which Mayor Ketchum was referring to a few moments ago, we're seeing way more claims on the cyber side than we are anywhere else. You don't even have to be smart to have to be a cyber crook. They just send you an email saying, hey, click this link, and some unsuspecting county employee says, oh, and clicks the link, and it's game on. So currently, the county does not have any cyber liability coverage. So my recommendation, let's kind of go through a little bit. I don't want to belabor all this. I don't know how much insurance ease you guys can stand. But so currently there's no coverage, and I've got a couple of options. You can see AXA has $1 million policy, and we can add APIP. We can add the cyber liability to the APIP policy for $2 million limit. So all of these are coverages that we don't currently have, and they're really important. And then you can see at the bottom there's premiums. AXA is $18,000 for $1 million, and APIP is just $6,500 for $2 million. Anybody want to get in the weeds on cyber liability? Keep going, she said. Okay. Do we need to?
Members, it's going to be the mayor's recommendation that I was just totally shocked that we had no cyber coverage. And when I found that out, I was going, oh my gosh. My recommendation is that we go with APIP, $2 million, and I'm not sure that that is enough. I don't know if any of you saw the 60 Minutes just a couple of weeks ago, a small Alabama town where Charles Barkley, basketball player, is from. That's their claim to fame. They got hit with a ransomware request, shut down their entire system in that little town, and wanted $50,000. And the mayor said, what are you going to do? And he sent a message back, and he said, we're just a small little poor town. He said, what if I give you 10? And they took it. And you have to pay in Bitcoin because it's not traceable any other way through Bitcoin, and it's going to wherever around the planet that they're cyber attacking and holding you up for ransom. There was also in that same segment a hospital up in Indiana. They were popped for a couple of $1 million, and they shut down their entire system within that hospital. They could not even intake into the emergency room and had to defer patients 15 miles away to another city. All of their computers went down. They had no medical history on anybody in the bed. It even shut down their pumps, IV pumps. It's just scary of what is happening, and I think there's another case in today's news of another city being held ransom. So this $2 million, we may want to look at that at a later point in time, but I would recommend that we go with the APIP on our cyber liability. It's just a way that people are attacking us and can bring us to our knees. And I hope wherever they are in Lithuania or wherever watching us don't come after us because I've suggested we buy this coverage. Yes, sir.
Items like, I realize we'd have our limits, but I know the phishing emails are getting better and better, and we have even seen emails that were they truly were from our employees' email accounts where they had been hacked coming to us. So this sort of thing would be covered all.
Correct. That's exactly what this covers. Exactly what this covers.
Yeah, we just purchased I signed off on allowing IT here for the county general to buy some phishing software. And they did a trial, I think, for all the employees, and they sent it out. And then if you clicked on it, it came up on the screen, you've been caught or whatever. But I think it's teaching a lesson. If you don't know where that came from, don't click on it because it's opening you up to everything. So, but this does provide coverage. Is that correct? Thank you.
That and network security. So there's two parts to this. I had to go into the weeds. So there's two parts to it. Sorry. First-party costs and third-party costs. So the school system gets hacked, right? And all the student data is captured, and now it's out on the web, right? Social Security, now everything. So there's going to be a lot of noise around that. So the money that we spend reimbursing students and parents for all of that, paying for credit monitoring, all of those things that go into that are what we call third-party costs because it's somebody else. But the vast majority of the money that you're going to spend is going to be first-party costs, meaning we've got to hire a breach coach to walk us through, well, what do we do next, right? And we've got to do forensics, which are incredibly expensive. So we hire an outside firm to come in and do an analysis of how they get in, how do we plug that hole? New software, it's incredibly expensive. So $2 million is probably enough. But, the average loss is probably average is $300,000 to $400,000, but you see stories. Every week you see stories about, much bigger losses.
It's much better than no coverage.
It's absolutely better than what we have now.
That's correct.
Yes, and Mayor Ketron, we did meet and speak with Brian Robertson's office, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he was happy that we were looking into this.
Absolutely. I'll entertain a motion. Jeff?
I'd like to make a motion to add the recommended cyber coverage through APIB.
Or APIB. Any questions? Is there a second? Is there a second? I got a second. The motion is to accept the APIB cyber liability. It's been seconded. All of those, any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next.
Okay, it's going to get a lot easier from here, guys. So the next one is dental professional. So we have a dentist and a dental hygienist in the health department. So we buy medical malpractice, dental professional liability for Dr. Bahada and Ms. Howard. And that's what this next slide is. It's $1 million per claim, $3 million aggregate. For dental insurance, that's probably plenty. I did throw some options. You can see if you want to go to a $2 million, $4 million limit, you can see that in the next little section down. And you can even do some excess coverages if you want to. Dental professional is not very expensive because there's not much exposure. Nobody ever really dies in the dental chair, so usually claims are not very expensive.
I'll entertain a motion. Jeff?
I'm finishing out, so move to approve.
Which one?
Admiral.
The dental, the $1 million.
$1 million.
$1 million from Admiral Insurance Company. Yes. Okay. I have a motion to accept the dental professional liability for $1 million, $3 million from Admiral Insurance. Is there a second? I got a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next.
Okay, so the last piece of this puzzle, and I'm not sure given our last conversation, so there's a policy that protects the volunteer firefighters if they're injured on the job. It's an occupational accident policy, and that's what this last page is. It's with Access Insurance Company. It's a $50,000 benefit. I'm definitely not going to go through all of these coverages, but we may address this. This doesn't renew until September, but because it was in the budget and all that stuff, I thought I'd throw it in here. And
I'd like for us to move forward on this. That way, while we're negotiating, at least we have coverage. And in the event of, is there any, can we cancel on a pro rata basis? All right.
So this is exactly what we have now. So it would renew in September 1st with the same benefits, same coverage, same everything.
Okay.
It'll probably even be the exact same premium.
Any discussion on that motion? Jeff?
Jeff, you're up.
Recommend that we go with Access Insurance Company for the volunteer firefighters insurance.
Okay. I have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. David, thank you so much. Look forward to working with you and Assured Partners. Yes, sir. Next, members need to announce the committee employee representative vacancy. Mr. Eagle?
Yes, right now we have a vacancy for the employee representative for the insurance committee. And we had some discussion on maybe changing the date. I had the 27th would be the next time we would meet. Do we need to vote on that, or I know you were talking about the budget committee. I mean, the full commission would be out the 26th.
Full
after
commission
theirs.
sets the tax rate on the 26th, and I'm not sure if people got a vacation plan and going to bolt. In July, right? Well, I'm not seeing there a need for that unless somebody objects, because we should take care of everything we've done here today. Will go to the next full commission meeting in June. So I'm not seeing a need. It's a good point. Mr. Phillips?
I was going to say that we've typically have had y'all cancel meetings if there was no action, especially July and sometimes August, but that really relates to what y'all have that you need.
I know where you're going. Okay.
The only thing that I see at the moment on the agenda would be to fill this position. What we would need to do now is that the applications, give them a deadline of when the applications would need to come in. I had originally said in 2 weeks, with the thought that, our next meeting would be the 27th. So if you want to do a deadline in 2 weeks.
There's not any really pending business to come before us.
Not for this committee, no.
So I think that if we were to announce the deadline and then fill the vacancy we don't meet in July or August? I'm sorry?
He was asking, didn't this go through steering? And I said, no, it went through steering, and they put it back to us because the guidelines say that it will be appointed by the insurance committee.
That is correct. They found it in the code that it comes back here to this to nominate. So we could actually, there's no need, we could wait till when everybody starts going back. Should it be you want to meet the end of July or end of August? Or August? That's about the time school's coming back, so. I'm sorry. So there's not a meeting scheduled in July, so I would say August. So what's the will of the committee? Want to wait till August? Come on, Jeff, one more time.
Are you wanting a motion to come back to this at the August meeting?
Yes, sir. Okay. Got a motion. Any further discussion?
We do need to set a deadline for the applications.
Sure. I would say
2 weeks prior, or what do you want to do?
2 weeks prior.
And if I could insert something for just a second. In going back and looking at the resolutions, and I have spoke with Sonia, trying to come up with a procedure for how this committee selected that person. Unless you've found some additional information, I have not found any procedure on how we're supposed to elect that person. So basically, we're going to accept applications, then we can determine a deadline, and at that point, bring all of them up here, or we can form a subcommittee to handle that, and then pick the top 2 to come to this committee. It's whatever you think's the best.
Sonia.
The only criteria that was listed in it says that the individual who applies must, one, be a county general employee, and the other piece of it is they must have a recommendation from their elected official or department head. So any of those applicants who have already applied or will apply would not be considered if they did not follow that process.
Did you say elected official and? Did you say and?
Or department head.
Or department head, not and?
Technically, the policy says department head,
Okay.
so
But it could be a county commissioner. That's our elected
could
official,
make
right?
the recommendation or be appointed. It says,
Are you talking about?
it says that it will be
You say elected
an...
official, you talking about a county commissioner or a constitutional officer?
So if the employee, the policy says that it's employees from county general to be selected. The recommendation, their application will be forwarded with a recommendation of their department head.
Okay.
So I, as an employee, would have my department head write a recommendation letter for me to be on this committee.
Yeah, because they don't
If-
have to be out of work.
Right. If their department head does not make a recommendation for them to be on the committee, it would exclude them from this process, the way I understand it.
Okay. All right, is everybody clear on that? All right. All right, I have a motion. Is there a second? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay, so we're talking about how people get on this committee in general, right?
County general.
County general employees specifically. Okay, thank you.
Never mind. Right. Okay. Any other discussion?
Is setting the deadline 2 weeks prior, is that okay, before our next meeting?
Would you make that part of your motion, Jeff, that 2 weeks prior? Okay, and who seconded, and if that's okay on the second? Whoever did that? Somebody did it, so it's okay? I'll second, thank you.
That would be August the 8th.
August the 8th would be our deadline, okay?
Our next meeting being August the 22nd.
August 22nd would be our next meeting, okay? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carries. That took care of 7 and 8 employee representative selection process. We took care of that. Under other business, I'd like to welcome Doug Bodery. Doug is the replacement of Jeff. Jeff, we're going to miss you, you know. Well, it has. How long you been on this committee?
I would fill in for Gail Toon initially, and then we were added, and we had
tag team. Well, we certainly thank you for your service, not only to this committee, but to Rutherford County. I know it's been a long journey, but hopefully coming from Opryland, it was just another entertainment. You know,
had some entertaining meetings.
Exactly. Well, they closed down the Opryland theme park, so we just continued on here, right? Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeff, and best wishes to your retirement. Any other business come before us today? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. Okay, well, I didn't know if everybody wanted to start again. All right, we have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned.